All right, creatures of the night. This is Alex Dorio here with a special bonus edition of Talking Taker here. I am not joined as usual by my tag team partner, Mr. Travis White, but instead we're going to be doing a bit of a scholarly look at one of the Undertaker's greatest rivalries here with one of our fans, one of our followers, one of our listeners, and someone who has a great deal of insight to give us on what I think most fans consider, and what we've heard The Undertaker in recent weeks, he's put it on the record and said this is his favorite series of matches that he's done throughout his entire career. The WrestleMania 4-match series, 2 with Shawn Michaels and 2 with Triple H. So we're about to dig into that here through our exploration of matches here on Talking Taker. And so we're going to be talking to someone you've heard us mention on the show with some of his comments on the show at St. Ridley, Dr. St. Ridley Santos, but we're going to hear from him as Spenser here on the show. Yeah. So Spenser, St. Ridley, thank you for joining us.
We're not kayfabing this anymore.
Yeah, we're breaking down the fourth wall.
We'll set aside the academic titles and stuff.
Well, thank you for joining me.
Of course, it's a pleasure. I've listened to every episode, and y'all are one of the only podcasts I still do that with, just because I've been a fan of The Undertaker for way too long, and 2, I don't have a lot of time to listen to podcasts, so this one's a good one to set aside that time for.
Well, that's an honor. I appreciate that, and we've got. When we started this journey, I guess, we knew it would be a lot of matches, and just kind of underestimated just how long it would be. But, it's been great to have people like you that have been committed to it the whole time. But, yeah, why don't you tell me and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and, how long have you been a wrestling fan? What drew you into professional wrestling?
Yeah. So I'm 31 years old. And the first wrestling show I went to, I was in the womb. So I was raised as a wrestling fan. My parents tell me stories of I was born in Worcester, Massachusetts, and we would go to shows in Springfield or in Boston. And my parents tell me I must have been 2 at the most, but just getting super excited because we saw Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty from across the street heading into the arena. Yeah. And Shawn was my very first favorite was Randy Savage, then Shawn Michaels, and then immediately upon his debut, his aesthetic, everything about the character just clicked for me. And I was, November 90, so I had just turned 2.
Wow, you remember that.
Ultimate Warrior terrified me. Undertaker, I was like, I like this guy.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, I watched wrestling pretty much religiously as a young fan does, through the Attitude Era, into Ruthless Aggression. There was a lot of points where I was starting to kind of feel like Ruthless Aggression era was getting very punching up on the tastelessness more than the Attitude Era in ways that I did not like, but which appealed to the edgy teen phase side of me. And then the Benoit family tragedy happened right as I was gearing off to start college, and between busyness and that really souring things, I was like, I need to set this aside for a bit.
Yeah, so very similar stories to Travis and I. We're just a couple years older than you, but kind of the same touch points. And obviously, we've talked on the show about the Benoit stuff, taking us out of our interests for a while as well. So what drew you back in after that?
So I was out of wrestling other than just periodically keeping up with what the streak was at until 2015.
Okay.
I was in the middle of my PhD. One of my friends knew that I used to watch wrestling, and he invited me over, I think, to watch SummerSlam.
Okay.
And like, so I went over to his place like the week before, and he kind of caught me up on some things. He showed me a little bit of like Battleground. He showed me some stuff from about NXT. Before SummerSlam started, he showed me the Sasha Bailey and the Balor Owens match from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And I dug Finn Balor immediately, but what really cemented me sticking around again was, wow, they're doing women's wrestling not dirty anymore. And that refueled my interest, and so the majority of the shows I've been to since 2015 have been Shimmer shows. I've been going to Chicago every Shimmer show that I can since 2018.
No, that was a game changer. When obviously the women's revolution or whatever, it gets blown out of proportion and some sort of stuff. But I mean, those NXT, those early days, like you said, Bailey, Sasha, Charlotte. I mean, some of those matches were just like,
Yeah, it's to the, like, Asuka is what really kind of cemented 100%. I'm sticking around, if nothing else, just to watch her.
She's incredible. Yeah.
She's absolutely fantastic at everything she does. It's amazing.
Yeah. So, I guess you missed a wide gap of stuff. Did you
I did.
Go back and rewatch it, or did you what made you want to see these matches in particular?
So I went back and I rewatched the streak matches specifically. I went back and I watched every Royal Rumble match. My friend Chris and I, we started a podcast. We've been on hiatus due to many life circumstance issues. You've talked about Heel Town back in the early days, and our project was to go through every significant American pay-per-view, which is still stupidly ambitious. Our last episode we actually did record was WrestleMania 3. I don't know if we ever actually published that one yet. But yeah, that's we want to do it. We just, life needs to align right for us to be able to continue recording.
Of course.
But yeah, I've gone back and watched things out of order from there. I went through and I watched all the streak matches again just to kind of refresh on that. See if my feelings on Brock Lesnar breaking the streak changed after watching them all in order. I think I still don't know if it necessarily had to be Brock, but that's neither here nor there.
No, yeah, there's pros and cons to it, I think, and we'll definitely debate that into the future. Yeah. But so you reached out to us a while back, and you told me that you had taught about this match and this series of matches in a class before. So
yeah, a few
where
times
did the
now.
idea for that come from, and what type of class were you teaching it in?
So I just finished up, and I don't have a new position lined up at the moment, but I just finished up teaching my last semester here at the University of Iowa. I've been teaching here for 7 years, and I've taught general education type literature survey courses. I've had the chance to teach a couple courses for English majors. One course was on medieval and modern monsters.
Okay.
For the Gen Ed, I did not teach this series in the course on monsters. I pared that down to just 2 matches, and one of them was Brock Lesnar versus Hulk Hogan.
Nice.
But for the Gen Ed courses, I did teach this series of matches because I thought one of the things I wanted to do was show the students that, okay, so these skills that I've been trying to work with on interpreting a story, understanding the components of a story, how a story narratively progresses, and what that does to our imaginations, how that works with emotional response. You can do this to other forms of theater, TV shows, music, even pro wrestling. And they're always very dubious about this. And I picked these 4 matches because immediately upon watching the streak in order, I saw this 4-match chunk here is, Undertaker said it just in episode 3 of The Last Ride, but these matches, it's not controversial to say, these tell a complete self-contained story. And the way that the characters move, change, evolve over the course of this story, the way that things are set up from one match to the next is really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think one of the beauties of it is not only is it this 4-year journey, and you can even go back a couple years before that with the Royal Rumble stuff in there as well. Mm-hmm. But you've got all the history from 1997 and 1998 playing into things, really their entire careers. I mean, both these guys as the cornerstones of WWE. Shawn was gone for 4 years due to injury, but neither guy had ever left. They've been WWE guys forever, and they've had that interaction, but they've also been on separate sides too, and they haven't overdone these matches with each other. It's not a match we've seen a million times.
Yeah, I would say that the specific story we're looking at here really begins at WrestleMania 24. Not with the Undertaker's match. The match with Edge is great, but it has no bearing whatsoever on this. But with Shawn retiring Flair.
Yeah. So explain how that plays into things.
So, for one thing, there's the obvious parallels. 2 years later, Shawn retires. You have the but the key thing about the Shawn Flair match, not even narratively speaking, but stylistically, that kicks this whole thing off is that moment at the end, Flair, sweaty, bloody, telling Shawn, bring it, and Shawn saying, I'm sorry, I love you, and then finishing it. That's I think that's kind of a major point of really opening up the theatrical element of wrestling more than it usually had been. And that sets the tone for what we're going to see here, because we have an arc with these matches. They get more and more brutal as they go. Mm-hmm. They become less and less flashy moves as they go across, and they become more and more over-the-top theatrical as they occur, too. And we'll get into this when we get into the individual matches. But by the end of 28, with that Hell in a Cell match, and you see the real bulk of the storytelling is not told via the moves in the match, but by the facial reactions of Shawn Michaels as referee. There's a really solid argument to be made that these 4 matches, the main character is not The Undertaker, but Shawn Michaels.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's something that I noticed as well. I love the idea of him as the main character. I hadn't really thought of that, but when you talk about his facial expressions, he's always been great at that, but you really see it come into focus during these matches, and his acting in it.
Yeah.
Shawn Michaels has tried to act in other things, but he's never the actor that he is in a professional wrestling.
Great at wrestling acting.
Yes.
And this is wrestling acting at its finest.
It absolutely is. Yes. So this WrestleMania 25 match, it kind of really kicks into gear. Really, the storyline about right after the February pay-per-view, the No Way Out pay-per-view, and Shawn Michaels challenges The Undertaker. He beats Kozlov. He beats JBL to earn his spot into this match. And then they really kick into high gear this whole Heaven and Hell storyline.
Right, and the fun part about this is when I teach these classes, the easy way to show people that wrestling's about storytelling is good guy, bad guy, face, heel, good, evil, and this match plays really nicely off the visual cues of that,
Right.
but it doesn't do that.
Right.
This match doesn't have a good guy or a bad guy. This
Yeah.
is shades of gray. Sean's playing up the visuals of the good guy, but it's all in mockery of the Undertaker.
Yep.
And coming back to this, also Sean's coming off the previous storyline where he's finally won his freedom from JBL, which was a stupid storyline,
Yes.
but it works well considering what his trajectory from beating Ric Flair was. He beats Ric Flair, he retires Ric Flair, Batista's upset about that and wants to avenge Ric Flair. Chris Jericho involvement, the slamming Sean's face into the obscenely expensive Geritron 5000. SummerSlam, Sean announces his retirement.
Right. Yeah.
Key thing there. Sean announces his retirement. He gets dragged back into things though. He can't let it sit because Jericho goads him into it. So Sean, we're looking at more than a year and a half out. Sean has this retirement thing planted for us.
Yeah.
And so he finishes the feud with Jericho, and from there, right, he has the whole JBL storyline.
Yeah,
So he's put to rest the guy who goaded him out of his attempt at retirement, and suddenly financial tragedy. I need money. I can't stay retired. I can't just go back and be like, I'm retired. I'm JBL's whipping boy. Finally wins his freedom, and he's like, okay, I still need to make money. I'm still the best there is. What's the best way to make a lot of money at a big show? Beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania.
Right.
That's going to have the biggest winner's purse. It's going to be a spectacular performance, and Shawn Michaels is all about the spectacular performance. So you have this kind of built-in logic that leads directly to, well, of course, challenging the streak is the perfect thing for Shawn to do.
And it's the one thing he's never done. I mean, he's held at every title. He's Mr. WrestleMania. He's main evented.
Right.
He's done it all. But that's the one thing he and nobody else has ever done. And he's cocky enough to think that he can pull it off.
Oh yeah, and so the heaven here it's twofold. Obviously, there's the play on the good and evil, but he's also trying to have that everlasting glory kind of thing. If he beats The Undertaker at WrestleMania, that's the everlasting glory. That's the heaven. That's also the heaven of financial security. Because I'm not going to let us forget that storyline immediately precedes this.
No, I like that you're bringing it into it.
And it sets this. It sets Shawn up at between his size compared to The Undertaker. It all sets him up really perfectly as the underdog, as if to say that, again, we're going to make this look like Shawn is the good guy to the Undertaker's bad guy to the uneducated eye. At a very face value way of looking at this, Shawn's coming out in white, Undertaker's coming out in black, descending from the heavens, rising from the depths. Key thing, Undertaker is not rising up from flames, though.
Mm-hmm.
The flames only come later in the entrance.
Right.
So he's not rising from the Inferno, and the Undertaker, it's not Christ versus Satan. It's an ambitious young hero, not young anymore, but a hero facing the inevitability of death.
Yeah, and you talk about shades of gray, and how Shawn Michaels, he is the light, but if you watch the build up to it, he's if anyone acts heelish, it's him. You know, he's the
Exactly.
one. He sneak attacks Undertaker so many more times, and he gets the upper hand.
And he does it the same way the next year too. Like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
super kick on the ramp in the video package, he gets another one off the next year's video package, and it's just like, all right, we're going that level of these callbacks here.
Mm-hmm. It's so great.
Sean's the one who feigns an injury very early in the match with his leg, and that comes back through the entire course of these 4 matches in a way. And we'll get to that, but so there's
and that's something he did too. Was that with Batista, or one of those matches?
Yeah,
or, yeah.
He faked out an injury on Batista in one of his post Flair matches.
Mm-hmm.
So Sean, you know, he's playing a little dirty because he knows that this is the impossible task, and I have to pull out every trick to do it. And depending on your set of cultural expectations about a hero, that's perfectly normal heroing to do in different cultures. I like to think of Sean here as almost like Beowulf fighting the dragon, knowing that this is a tall order. He's kind of getting up there in years at this stage, but you know, you got to do everything you can to fight it, and he goes down. He doesn't succeed. He doesn't outright win this. He has a fantastic performance, though.
Well, Travis is going to love a good Beowulf reference. He's a huge Beowulf fan, so I appreciate you bringing that up. So yeah, why don't you walk us through sort of this WrestleMania 25 match, kind of the way you would through the class, and you know, how you want to start it.
So there's a lot that I can do here that I can't do in a classroom because I'm just trying to get them to buy in.
Sure.
A lot, and work through just the narrative beats of, okay, so you can see how, you know, the things they do early in the match affect things later, that sort of thing. Kind of often clarifying the, you know, how much is real, how much is fake, how much is planned, how much is improvised kind of thing. But right away during the entrances, we have Michael Cole attempting really valiantly but poorly to explain what the general theme of this match is about these two characters. He talks about how they have different personalities, different ways of living. It's just the stupidest sounding thing. In the end, he says, but they have one similarity, they're both winners. And this gets me back to my Beowulf comparison, because he's trying to get at what's happening in Beowulf too. Is Beowulf is a hero, the monsters, Grendel's mother, and the dragon are all monsters. But the way that the Old English is written, there are words that are used to describe both of them, both the hero and the monsters, that are the same.
Wow.
And what's happening here is Michael Cole he's overstating the differences. But the key thing to take away is these two are a lot more alike than you might think.
Yes.
They're both monsters of performers. And the Sean is just as monstrous a performer in terms of his incredible wealth of skill as the Undertaker is. So, and you look at this, there's no clear hero. Look at the signs and hear the crowd reactions. The Undertaker is just as beloved. This match itself, I don't think we need to go into too much detail on this part. Y'all will cover when you get there in your next regular episode the play-by-play of this match, because the play-by-play of this match doesn't really matter for the big story.
Yeah.
What matters about this match is that it's a steady upward climb of rising tension. They start off kind of slow, feeling each other out. They build to, okay, now we got a high spot. A little bit more, now another high spot. The big dive to the outside, which terrifying.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Undertaker landing straight on his head is absolutely horrible. You can see the dent in the mat on the outside. And Marty Elias even said on Talk is Jericho that Undertaker told him to count him out if he couldn't make it back in before the match.
I remember watching it live. I think Travis and I both, we thought Undertaker broke his neck. And I was so afraid, not only that he'd broken his neck, but he was going to lose the streak off a count out because he couldn't get back up.
And the fact that he told Marty Elias to count him out if he couldn't make it into the ring means we very well could have had the streak end on a count out here, and we would never have gotten the rest of this story. Which tells us a bit about the fragility of a story and how wrestling, due to its physical nature, it's really unpredictable no matter how much you plan it out.
Yeah, and we can get into that as we go along through this, but I think every one of these 4 matches, for different reasons, could have never happened, for various injuries, and we'll talk about that as we go on.
Yeah. So we have that moment obviously changes the flow and the pace of the match significantly, because I don't think anyone quite expected Undertaker to be down for that long. They did as much of a stall as they could before they got to the count out part. There's also just the lovely callback there to the fact that Shawn Michaels hates referees and hates camera people. The last time the last incredible match they had together was Hell in a Cell, and Shawn did that.
Man in that, great point.
Against Undertaker's dive. Undertaker dives at Shawn. Shawn pulls a cameraman in the way. It's a rule.
I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, that's perfect.
But so you get to. Oh, here's the last ride. Oh, false start on the Sweet Chin Music, hits the Sweet Chin Music, hits the first tombstone, and Shawn kicks out of the tombstone. Great visual, kind of close up of Taker not quite believing it. Shawn fights, keeps fighting. It's that moonsault at the end. It's not a moment of Undertaker outperforming per se. It's a Taker out wrestling Shawn.
Yes.
Shawn gets a little cocky there. He gets a little I'm gonna go for something a little spectacular here, and he gets caught with his pants down on it. He gets tombstoned out of it, and he loses. So when he talks in the build to 26, I wrestled nearly a perfect match. It's him kicking himself for that. Oh, I shouldn't have gone for that moonsault then, because it was hit with a counter, and that plays ultimately that counter is paid off in 27. We'll get there once we get through 26, but this interesting case of counter wrestling at the end. We have here ultimately this match is rooted in the athletics. This is a match about the athletics. It's a match about the will of competition. It's you could say that there's a theme of heaven versus hell. That's what they sold it as. You can say that this is two guys who aren't as a thesis of analysis for this match, I would say that the real core of this is that these two are both trying to put on the greatest performance possible, both in and out of character, and that this is about them matching each other, being mirrors to each other. Monster Hero being the same stuff, and that counter moment is kind of the key final cementing point of it, because ultimately it's about them both wrestling each other to a finish, and they're pretty much equal.
Yeah, and there's no chair spots, there's no table spots, there's no ref the ref gets shoved out of the way, but there's no the ref's out cold for a while. It is, out of any of these, it is the most of a pure wrestling match, and I like how you talk about it evolving throughout these 4 years, all the way up into Hell in a Cell, the most brutal match in WWE's terms.
Yeah. And so we look at this and we say, okay, they've had a great match. It's fantastic. WrestleMania, cool. Wonder what they'll do next year. And there's no indication that this is going to grow into something new.
Right.
That WrestleMania, because Drew McIntyre's talked about how he was originally pitched to be Taker's opponent for WrestleMania 26.
Right. And how different things would have been for him had
We
that
would
happened.
not. Yeah, this whole thing wouldn't have been a thing.
No. So correct me if I'm wrong, the build really starts like at the Slammy Awards, or is there anything else right before
I think
that?
that's correct.
Yeah.
Because Undertaker it's a weird 2010 for the Undertaker.
Yes.
I think that they have that whole vegetative state thing with Kane and Rey Mysterio involved, or is that 2010?
That's 2010. So 2009,
Okay.
he's with CM
Okay.
Punk for a while, and then I think it's at the Slammies they win Match of the Year, Shawn and Undertaker, and Shawn accepts the award, and that's where he decides he wants to.
I want to give it another go.
Okay. Yeah.
I want to try again.
Yeah.
I think it's like Dana Brooke versus Asuka. I figured out the trick. You're a slow starter, Undertaker.
Yep.
Armbar 3 seconds in, Shawn loses. That would have been a twist.
I think that's the only time Shawn Michaels has ever been compared to Dana Brooke, but
Anyway, so and Taker he's not
refuses,
interested.
yeah.
He's not interested. He's looking for the streak matches for the Undertaker. I think to a degree, as a character, he's not looking to have repeats just to have repeats.
Yeah.
I think the character is looking for something new.
He defeated Shawn. What does it do for him to defeat him again? How does that add to his legacy? Yeah.
Right. I'll do it if you put your career on the line.
Yeah.
If you retire after I beat you again. And Shawn, beautifully says, if I can't beat you, I have no career.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you talk about Shawn's acting. The Royal Rumble 2010, where Shawn's trying to win that so he can get that match with Undertaker, because Undertaker was the champion at that point. And as Shawn just hanging on by one hand and falls out of that Rumble, and is just like in tears as he falls out.
Attacking people afterwards, just the obsession that Shawn develops about this, because he's been told no, because he's been... okay, I'm going to go for the obvious routes to get it. Undertaker's world champion, I'll win the Royal Rumble.
Yep.
Undertaker's world champion, and I didn't win the Royal Rumble, then I'll hide in the chamber and I'll cost him the title, so he has to.
Yep.
He's not obligated to a title defense, and I can, he can have a personal issue with me. When I teach these, I grab all of the pretext materials, all the promos related to the build-up of the match, and I put them into my course management site to have the students watch those, then watch the match. So they get kind of the full arc of the build-up.
Yeah.
Because seeing Shawn's obsession is very different from reading Shawn had an obsession.
Sure. Yeah.
It's the same as with any book. You can read the spark notes, but you don't get any of the depth of it.
No, you don't. And they always produce those great video packages before the matches, and that's if you can't see anything else, that's a pretty good
those
condensement
are fantastically well done.
But if you can watch all of it, it adds even more layers to it.
Right.
So take us into...
and so this match...
Yeah, take us into that.
So this match is obviously it's streak versus career. That's the theme of it. And this is the one that I think really begins to introduce what the overall arc and purpose of these 4 matches is, which is there's a 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verse 26, the last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. That's the King James version. Death is inevitable. Can death be conquered?
Yeah.
No, we can't conquer death. We're mortals.
Right.
But the Undertaker isn't, and this is the thing about this match, is the Undertaker isn't death. He's an avatar for death in the world of wrestling. And he might be beatable. And this match really goes a long way toward humanizing the character of the Undertaker. And the rest of these matches do as well. But this one makes it very clear that that's what's happening. We talk about Shawn. I'll talk about entrances in a moment, but just at the beginning of the match, Shawn feigned the leg injury toward the beginning of the previous year's match. Taker, old school, the leg gives out. Not a minute into the match.
Yeah.
So now we've reversed that. We've introduced, the Undertaker is selling almost this entire match that he can barely walk.
And the Undertaker, I think he's underrated for his selling too. He tells a great story when you see him do that.
Yeah. So the Undertaker this match it's Taker selling on the run for the entire match.
Right.
And what's going on here that's really fascinating is it's not just the selling that adds a human dimension to him. And we'll get to there. So, we have this, it's a reflection, Shawn, you have a interesting 3-year story, Shawn versus Flair, Shawn versus Taker, Shawn versus Taker, career-ending match as bookends here.
Yeah.
And you notice the way that their entrances are different this year. Shawn is without all the pomp and circumstance. He's stripped it down to, I'm not going to do the whole white special entrance. I'm just going to come out. He's very calm about it. He says his prayer at the top of the ramp.
Yep. He
heads to the ring. He waits. There's minimal showboating. There's minimal mockery of death in this. Undertaker, on the other hand, has a somewhat more spectacular entrance. You have that cool laser light summoning circle effect.
Yeah.
And he also, usually you see Undertaker, some visual cue, some movement he does to summon the fire. The fire simply appears as he's making his way down the ramp.
Yeah.
And so Shawn here, he's just a man facing down his own death.
Yeah.
In a way.
And this is also, we talked about, matches that we might not have seen, but this is a month after Undertaker had been burned at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, suffered those severe burns too. So I remember at the time thinking, is he even going to be able to make it through this match? You talk about his humanity being on display in this. You've got that in the back of your mind as well.
Right. Yeah. And this match, it's a lot like the previous match. I actually like this one a little better than 25.
Yeah, a lot of people, I think people are divided. I think it's 50-50 from what I hear
I think in terms of purely wrestling, 25 wins as a purely wrestling story. This match with the little uptick to the drama, to the actual play acting aspect of things, I think it appeals a little more to my sensibility.
Yeah. So how do we see through this 26 match, how do we see the connections to the 25 match? What are some of the things that come into play?
So we have for instance, we have a reversal on who does the leg selling. The fact that for Shawn it was a fake out to try and hit the Undertaker off guard. Here the Undertaker is now in. This match is no DQ. So we have that little escalation of brutality. They don't bring out chairs or anything, though.
Yeah.
It's a playoff of, we had that scary moment of the Undertaker almost getting counted out, and Shawn's like, I don't want to win and beat the streak that way.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna have no DQ. Don't count us out. Just let us do what we do. And so that builds up, instead of Undertaker doing the big dive, we got a cutoff of a dive. Shawn cuts Taker off in this match, so Taker doesn't have to take that dive again.
Yeah.
But instead we got Shawn moonsaulting off the turnbuckle through the table on Taker's legs. And the fact that he hits Taker's legs just really kind of adds to that moment. You might think, oh man, he kind of whiffed his positioning, but no, he's playing off the whole leg thing.
That's on purpose.
Match is about.
Yeah, absolutely.
The pace of the way this match starts off, pace-wise, we saw previously they felt each other out. That was last year's match. They felt each other out, and now Taker's just boom on him. He's like, I do not want to deal with this, and I will not deal with this. I'm going to just put you down, and then boom, the leg. So we get this almost this frustration from the Undertaker, both at his physical issue through the match, but also at the very idea that Shawn has the temerity to challenge him twice in a row.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I could have wrestled someone new, and instead I have to put you down. I am not wasting my time. I am not wasting, any more energy than is necessary on this.
Yeah, you can see that across his face throughout the match. Yeah.
And so Shawn, you get glimpses of Shawn, he's all business here, but he pulls off a little bit of the showboating. He pulls off a little bit of the same kind of stuff as he had. He does some interesting things. The previous year, he put Taker in his version of the figure four, which I, for the life of me, have never been able to figure out why Shawn does that.
Yeah.
Weird kind of, I'm a put the legs on wrong for the figure four.
Yep.
This year he does Flair's figure four. He does an ankle lock. He does an X Factor to counter out of the last ride. Like, he's honoring his friends.
Yeah, he's going back through the years.
Through this match.
Yeah.
There's going for submissions throughout this match, and it doesn't work in the moment. Right, to see Shawn put Taker in the figure four and think, oh, Taker might submit here, because no, that's not on anyone's radar here. It does pay homage to Flair and the fact that Shawn beat Flair. It plays on the leg, of course, but as a spot where you're thinking, oh, this isn't going to be a finish. Something's going to happen here.
Yeah.
It kind of, you can see the crowd kind of die down a little at that moment, because they aren't concerned for the Undertaker.
Yeah.
But we're building still
exactly.
toward the bigger picture of these four matches. So we get Shawn trying to, even the way he counters Hell's Gate, which I think they call out, is this the first time someone's countered Hell's Gate?
Yeah.
It's Hart Austin 96 Survivor Series.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite finishes of all time.
Yeah. And I've loved the way that that spot has been reused through the years.
Me too.
Ember Moon doing it to Shayna Baszler in their first takeover match was fantastic.
Yeah, it always works.
So the goal here is, of course, Shawn. We're trying to, because we don't want Shawn to go. If one of them is playing good guy or bad guy here, in some ways Taker is the subtle heel here,
I agree.
simply because we want Shawn to keep wrestling.
Yes.
So the whole purpose of this match, and Undertaker's selling especially, is we want to believe, because stories tell us this, that death can be conquered. You can cheat death. You can go on and keep doing what it is you do. But as other stories tell us, and as human experience tells us, you can't.
Right.
So the moonsault through the table, that's the point, I think, where we truly do get to, maybe this could be it. Maybe this could be the end of the streak. Maybe Shawn might do it.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting part of all four of these matches is, for me at least, when I was watching them live, I never, before the match started, if you asked me, I'd say, okay, Undertaker's winning. It's 100%. They're not going to have Shawn Michaels or Triple H break the streak. It doesn't do anything for those guys.
A streak versus retirement match, obviously the retirement's going to happen.
Exactly.
But...
And yet, in each one of these four matches, they're able to make you suspend that disbelief. At least at one moment in each match, at least in one near fall where you think, well, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, and you can see even, again, we get the tombstone kick out, and the Undertaker, it's not disbelief this time. Mm-hmm. Last time his head's resting on Shawn's hip, and you get that beautiful stunned face.
Yes.
This time, he almost, it's not quite a, Captain Charisma temper tantrum. But he is pissed that this did not work. This is the second tombstone of the match. The first one happened fairly early on outside the ring. Come on.
Right, no.
Undertaker doesn't do that
in
matches. Mm-mm. So, again, further humanization. It makes us realize Undertaker, the character, is invested in this.
Yes.
And not in terms of putting on a great match or even in terms of keeping the streak alive, but he wants to beat Shawn. He is invested. He's invested some portion of his being in, I have to win this.
Yes.
Which is a very human thing. He's not Death the Dispassionate. He's Mark Calloway, Death's chosen, in a way.
Yeah, and he's been challenged in a way that he never has been before, and yeah,
and it's because he's not simply doing the inevitable. He's doing what he feels he has to do, and as Shawn is struggling toward his feet, Taker goes for he signals the throat slash for the final tombstone, but he stops himself and he looks at Shawn, and you kind of get that little shrug from the Undertaker, telling Shawn stay down,
mm-hmm.
which will come back the next two matches.
Yep.
But he's not a dispassionate. He's not even just an executioner now. He's just a man who's wondering why. What is making you want to keep going? And this is of course where we really uptick the theatrical, and Shawn, clinging to Undertaker's pants, throat slash himself, slap the Undertaker. You get that fantastic, Undertaker bug-eyed, angry, jumping tombstone finish. And then he does something that he doesn't really, outside of these matches, he doesn't do it again until 33, where he somewhat breaks character a little.
Yes.
I don't know what he says to Shawn.
Yeah,
I can't read his lips, and it's not. The audio isn't picked up, but he says something. He shakes Shawn's hand, he hugs him, and leaves the ring to Shawn. You know, obviously this is The Undertaker, the man, versus The Undertaker, the persona.
Exactly. You know, and it's, like you said, it never happens. You know, we saw him pay tribute to Ric Flair when Ric Flair was retired. Another nod, a connection between these two things. But that's, I mean, outside of that, you saw it a little bit during the Biker Taker days when he shook John Cena's hand and things like that. But as far as
Jeff Hardy,
yes, that sort of stuff. But as far as the dead man, yeah, it's so powerful.
So yeah, and you could be forgiven for thinking, all right, man, that was a beautiful 2-year story.
Sure,
we're done. What's next?
Of course.
And it just like when Shawn beat Flair, and Batista's like, I do not like that you retired my friend. Triple H is like, I do not like that you retired my friend.
No, he does not.
I am angry at you, Undertaker, and I want to fight you. And we're going to also have a no-holds-barred match, no DQ, no countouts.
And this was another one that I don't think this was the original plan. You know, I think online a lot of us were thinking this would be Undertaker Sting. You know, they did those vignettes with I think they were
talking to Sting.
Yeah.
And whatever their negotiations were fell through.
It was in Atlanta, so it was like, oh, WCW country. We're gonna see Sting Undertaker finally. I think there were some plans for Wade Barrett and the Undertaker because that's the Nexus is who takes out the Undertaker as well.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, Triple H steps in, and Triple H has his haters out there, but man, this rivalry and these two matches are incredible as well.
Yeah, and the thing about these matches is, I think as far as these do not come close to touching as far as in-ring like wrestling performances the previous 2 years, but they're equally compelling.
Yes.
Even though there really is, like, this one and especially the next one, there's not a lot of wrestling about them. These are just knockdown, drag-out, street fight brawls.
Yeah.
With there's no connection between what they're doing in these two matches and, Lou Thez in the 50s. Shawn Michaels and Taker just the previous 2 years far more resembles a Lou Thez match.
Yeah, it does. And
and it doesn't, neither of those matches resemble a Lou Thez match in the slightest.
Right. And that's okay. Wrestling doesn't have to be...
The diversity of wrestling is
right.
breathtaking sometimes.
I loved to set up this Triple H Undertaker match. Triple H is in the ring. He's about to cut a promo. Undertaker's music hits. He comes out, and neither guy says a word the entire time. It's an entire setup for a match with no words being said, and you don't have to, and you get the whole storyline.
Because it's building off these two previous matches. Everyone knows Triple H's relationship with Shawn Michaels. Everyone knows that both his motivation for wrestling The Undertaker because Shawn is retired now is both genuine friendship, but it's also, an egomaniac, like, I can do it.
Totally.
He couldn't. I can't. I can do it. I can do it. I'm the best at wrestling.
I'm the game.
I've literally decided to call myself wrestling. I'm the game.
Yeah, exactly.
I can do it. And so you don't need any real build-up to this match other than the two previous matches in the series. And even though Shawn is completely absent here, it's still centered around him.
Yes.
And this is why I think, like, you can say Shawn is really the character whose storyline this is, even though he's retired for 2 of the matches.
Right. No, it's the instigator for this. We all know Triple H and Shawn Michaels bond. Shawn Michaels gets inducted into the Hall of Fame the night before this, and we see again that bond between Triple H and Shawn Michaels as he inducts him. So yeah, the undertones are there, even if it's not overtly, focused on it on screen.
It's about as subtle as wrestling gets.
Yes, which is not very much.
Not terribly subtle, but we're not talking about, high art.
So this is WrestleMania 27, Triple H Undertaker. Travis and I were there live and in person for this one, and it's the only reason why I still love this WrestleMania, even though it's often looked at as one of the worst WrestleManias. But just being there in person and seeing this match live, one of the best matches live I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, no, I wish I could see... I've never seen an Undertaker match live.
Oh, no.
I wish I had the opportunity, but just, time, money, cost to go to WrestleMania is well beyond my reach right now.
Yeah.
Let alone a virus.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I had some consideration about possibly being able to go this year, but I was looking at, we're not going to have the money to be able to afford that.
It adds up. Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, for me, the match that I've seen live that I love the most was Tessa Blanchard versus Mercedes Martinez,
Really?
75-minute Iron Woman match.
Right. Yes. I read it. I haven't seen that, but I read about it. Yeah.
Absolutely fantastically well-told story through the entire 75 minutes. Just brilliant stuff. And this match does just, again, I love going to the entrances on these. Undertaker entrances are spectacular just because they put so much effort into them. Triple H entrances are spectacular, but sometimes a little hokey.
Sometimes, yeah. He's in love with himself a little too much. But tell us what's so different about Undertaker's entrance on this night.
Well, both Triple H enters first, and it's important what happens because the bell always tolls for the Undertaker's entrance. I know it's become a meme that the gong hits, but it's a funeral bell.
Yes, we have talked about that on the show.
And Triple H, his prelude to his entrance is Metallica's "For Whom the Bell Tolls."
Yep.
So we get the sound of the bells, and it's not signaling the Undertaker for, I think, the first time since fake Undertaker.
Wow. Yeah, I think you're right.
And so we have Triple H playing off the Undertaker's entrance with that. We have this the song itself, and the WWE Network has a dubbed thing for it that's not as good, but it's kind of at least somewhat attempting to ape the feel of it. But For Whom the Bell Tolls is a very strongly drum-driven beat. It's very warlike, regular pace, rigid pacing to this song, and he comes out with this shield wall, his whole barbarian king get-up stuff, and then he gets his regular entrance, and it's like, okay, you did your prelude. Here's the interesting part, and it's because you're playing off the Undertaker. You're taking on the role of death. The Undertaker, he's been humanized a bit from the previous match. He's not death in this match. He's not the inevitable. He comes out, and the whole entrance, again, the network dubs over this with just his regular entrance. But he comes out to Johnny Cash's Ain't No Grave.
Oh my goodness.
And it's the best entrance he's ever had.
I agree with you 100%. I had chills in the building that night. It was unbelievable.
And if you watch carefully, it's hard to find a good view of this entrance on the internet. Um, and interestingly, WWE's YouTube page shows Triple H's entrance with the unedited "For Whom the Bell Tolls." Their version of Undertaker's entrance on YouTube is redubbed over with his regular music.
I'll never understand their music rights.
I don't pretend to.
We've talked about it on the show. It's so frustrating because that music adds so much to it, and they got all this Saudi Arabia money. Just it can't cost that much to get a Johnny Cash song for one show.
But of course it's the rebroadcast rights.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah,
that kill it. But so if you watch this, there's enough fan cam videos from the stands to be able to at least see where the musical cues are hitting.
Right.
Because as Undertaker comes to the ring and he stops before he turns toward the steps, you get Taker staring at Triple H staring back, and Taker turns toward the steps just as the song enters its final refrains of "Ain't no grave can hold my body down." And then when the song loops, Undertaker raises the lights just as you get the words, "When I hear that trumpet sound, I'm going to rise up out of the ground." So those are key. The timing. Undertaker's always had perfect timing with his entrances. Triple H as well. There's a reason you see the way entrances are with the younger wrestlers today is because of the influence of what these two have done with entrances.
Yes.
They,
for better or worse,
the Freebirds introduced the entrance as we know it today, but Undertaker and Triple H have really shaped it. Mm-hmm. And also, if you look behind Undertaker during his entrance, you'll see a half-buried Undertaker symbol.
Oh, okay.
And it's, it's almost a sign of what this match will be.
Ah, I never noticed that.
And just like Shawn, I've done everything but end the streak. Triple H is like, I've done everything but end the streak.
Yes, exactly.
You and I will define an era. The theme of this match, obviously, is, Triple H says the theme going in as far as what they're promoting is defining an era. But the real theme is, there ain't no grave that can keep Undertaker's body down.
Yep. They played that before the show as well, and that was a huge part of it.
And that's really the theme and the thesis here are basically the same. Undertaker is human. He can be beaten.
Yeah.
This match proves he can be beaten at WrestleMania, but he's not going to make it easy, and he isn't yet.
Yes. What jumps out to me from this match, and I think most people, is the tombstone Triple H gives Undertaker, and that near fall where Triple H does the classic Undertaker cover. I mean, we'll talk about next year's classic
Finisher
near fall as well.
Fantastic.
But oh my goodness, it's
they need to do more finisher theft.
That's all. Yeah, it's always great. I'm a huge fan of it. So where does this match play in to those Shawn Michaels matches? How is it? What are some things in this match that connect to those?
Right. So obviously we have an immediate again ramp up of the pace once more. Right. We start slow. We start fast. Now we're just almost immediately. We're outside the ring. We're exploring the space. We're destroying scenery.
Yep.
They destroy the coal mine right away, which is both satisfying because it's absolutely horrible that thing existed. It sets a tone for the match, and it also just shoves it just enough out of the way that it makes a safe landing spot for the Undertaker when he does die. Because this is the first time we've seen Undertaker do his big dive at WrestleMania since the disastrous one at 25.
And this match
so it's both good.
It's immediately more violent than either of the Shawn Michaels matches.
Yeah. We have one chair enters the picture. You know, Jerry Lawler asks the question early: Can the Undertaker be beaten at WrestleMania? Uh, Jr. says that's the question. That's the unanswered question. There's very little connective tissue in some ways in terms of moves and spots to the previous two matches, simply because this match doesn't feature a great deal of moves.
Yeah.
Um,
Triple H isn't jumping off with a moonsault anytime soon
right.
either.
But we have, Triple H hits a double A spine buster on the Undertaker, which is it's always a nice callback to that Ric Flair aspect of things. We have just the again Triple H kicks out of a tombstone here, which has not only become just a feature of Undertaker WrestleMania matches
Yeah.
at this stage, but again, it's a connection to the way that it's happening in these Shawn Michaels matches.
And in a sense, it's showing his humanity too. As each year he gets older, his moves are not quite as
Become
effective.
a little less effective.
Yeah, he used to be, Tombstone was it, but now, as he becomes more human, it doesn't finish him right off the bat.
Yeah. And Shawn was hitting multiple sweet chin musics on Undertaker. Triple H hits 3 pedigrees on the Undertaker and a tombstone. Right? So we get this, we've seen sweet chin music can't do it. We've seen pedigree can't do it. The next one we'll see, obviously, and Taker comments specifically on the moment of sweet chin music plus pedigree.
Yes.
But we have this the key thing that connects in the ring this match to last year 26 is Taker had Shawn down from the tombstone. Shawn kicks out. Taker tells him stay down. Triple H hits 3 pedigrees, beats him up with the chair. Stay down.
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with you? Just die already. Yeah. And Undertaker won't, so Triple H tombstones him and he kicks out. And Lawler says he's not human. Which is just it's perfectly Jerry Lawler for
right.
Lawler to miss the point of what's happening here and how we're humanizing the Undertaker, but it is it's a good call in the moment to what do you do when a guy kicks out of 3 pedigrees and a finisher steal?
Yeah. What is
no
there
one
to do?
does that?
No one does that.
So Triple H brings out the sledgehammer.
Trusty sledgehammer.
And this is where Undertaker's humanity is in full display, because he's crawling toward the ropes, trying to pull himself out of the ring, trying to just escape. He can't get up. He's been brutalized too much in this match, and he's just trying to flee. The Undertaker doesn't flee.
No.
And Triple H is going to go for it, but again, counter wrestling. He caught Shawn's moonsault at 25. Triple H takes just a half a second long with the sledgehammer, and he grabs the arm, and he doesn't quite get it past through the legs like he should, but he's able to get a passable enough Hell's Gate and choke Triple H out, and Triple H takes forever to choke out.
He does, yeah.
But it's again, he out-wrestled Shawn at 25. And in this brawl, it came down to a wrestling move.
Yep.
Out-wrestling Triple H.
And a subtle mistake, he's able to capitalize on to get that victory. And it's, you see in the moments afterward, that's when the story you're talking about really goes to another level, when Triple H and Undertaker, the way that they sell after the match is a huge part of this.
Yeah. Triple H he's down and out, Undertaker's down and out. Triple H recovers enough to gain his feet and stumble out of the ring and kind of hang around a little as he's trying to get enough under him to be able to head back, and Taker's just not moving. Mm-hmm. And Triple H is like, Triple H is looking. There's some concern even. He moves like he's going to check on Undertaker. They're like, no, you stay away.
Right.
You were literally about to hit him in the face with a sledgehammer. We do not trust you to check on this man.
Right.
And they bring down like the
little golf cart. Yeah.
Yeah, the golf cart scooter gurney.
Yeah.
And they load a basically unconscious selling Undertaker on it, and Triple H again, you see him selling, holding his arm, kind of, walking a little toward it, but hanging back just enough. And the quiet, grave voices, from JR and King, just, it's not the Owen Hart voice.
Right.
But it's like, it's just a notch enough that you're like, okay, they're still kayfabe and things. But okay. The Undertaker, and it plays into the next year, of course, is, they say, the Undertaker feels like, that was effectively a loss.
Exactly. Yeah.
The Undertaker, he doesn't have a loss in the record books here, but he was beaten.
Yep.
At WrestleMania.
Yep. And that, we've seen him on this Last Ride series. He kind of talked about post this match. This is when he had some hip surgery done, and he really didn't know if he would be coming back for 28 the next year. And that's, ultimately why we see him with a different look at 28. But that is the storyline going into this, is that for the first time, Undertaker is not satisfied with, he got the pin, but he left on the stretcher while Triple H walked away. So
right.
He's not happy with that.
So we have a balance here, because 25 he beats Shawn. Shawn challenges him and Undertaker says no. 27, Undertaker beats Triple H, but Taker's not satisfied with it because he doesn't feel like he really won it. Triple H says no.
Yes. That's one of my favorite tricks in wrestling, is to tell the fans no and really make them want something by telling them they can't have it.
It's about symmetry. Mm-hmm. And we have this kind of unfolded symmetry here between the two halves of this story, built around, okay, one of them wants a rematch, the other guy says no. And the Undertaker's the common guy through all of it.
Right.
But, and of course, it's the Undertaker. Shawn wants the rematch with the Undertaker, so he's going to give up something to the Undertaker in exchange for this. I'll put my career on the line. Undertaker wants the rematch with Triple H. He's got to put something up. And that is, Triple H picks all the stipulations.
Yes.
And we're going to do Hell in a Cell, because we've been in 2/3 of these matches,
right? And
we've never had one-on-one, and Shawn's the referee.
Yep. Which adds such a cool layer and level to the story, whereas it was subtle last year's match, and this it's so much more overt. Undertaker ended Shawn Michaels' career. Shawn Michaels is Triple H's best friend. How is he ever going to maintain any sort of credibility as the referee in this match?
It's absurd to expect him to.
Yeah.
And he's also Shawn Michaels as a character has this level of respect for the Undertaker that he really wants to. He wants to have that impartiality, and that's the thing that he demonstrates really well here, is he's trying so hard not to favor either one, and especially not to favor Triple H.
Right.
But he just can't quite do it.
No.
He's still Shawn Michaels. He's still kind of a little bit out for himself, and he's still going to protect his buddy.
And that's where the acting comes into play. That's where the history, as we've watched Shawn Michaels for over nearly 30 years, comes into play into all this. It's so brilliant.
Yeah.
Where do you think The Undertaker's new look going into this match, how do you think that plays into the storyline? Do you see anything in that?
Oh, it's a direct parallel to Shawn's obsession.
Mm-hmm.
Shawn's obsession going into 26 with the freak out at the Rumble when he doesn't win, the dead-eye stare after he costs The Undertaker the chamber match. You know, Shawn's not doing a visual change to his appearance to sell his obsession. He's doing the deranged, grasping at straws kind of obsession.
Yeah.
Undertaker they're selling as, you know, he challenges Triple H and he shaves his hair every day until he gets the response of yes. And it's like, that's a weird choice of way to obsess, but I'm not going to argue with someone who's almost 7 feet tall about how they choose to obsess, especially not someone with that many tattoos.
Yeah. And it threw me for a loop to see Undertaker like that.
Yeah, because it's the first time he's had short hair at all since Big Evil.
Yeah, as the Dead Man. You know, it's the first time he's ever looked like that. But I kind of grew to love it as, like you said, this next evolution. He's stripped down in a way. He's had to change himself. He is this older outlaw, and he's, you know, coming to terms with that.
It's human.
It is human.
It's really human.
Yeah.
Because only humans cut their hair. Like,
yeah, sure.
Zombie liches don't. And The Undertaker, again, he's being humanized throughout these matches.
Yeah.
Now he's a man with an obsession. Again, the Dead Man doesn't obsess. The Undertaker obsesses now.
Yeah.
And so as far as these entrances go, obviously the Undertaker's entrance really brilliantly obscures that until the reveal right before the cell gets lowered. We get the thunder crack right as he pulls the hood down, and it's like, holy, what? Yeah. I've never seen The Undertaker with his hair this short.
That is shocking. Yeah.
Triple H's entrance is shenanigans and stupid this year. Shawn's entrance is his typical referee. It's Shawn Michaels as referee. Obviously, he's the center of attention.
Of course.
JR has almost this Freudian slip during the entrances where he talks about how the road to everlasting mortality runs through WrestleMania, which is a misstatement.
It is.
Because that means death.
Right. Everlasting mortality.
You go to WrestleMania, you're going to die. No, JR, it's immortality. You will be recorded for history to behold forever. But it's a Freudian slip about what this story's really doing. It's about mortalizing The Undertaker. It's about rehumanizing him. This is the beginning in some ways of the journey toward where we got to with Undertaker and AJ Styles, where he's, you know, bringing this into the hybrid.
Yes.
And the cell lowers and the network, I don't know why they have the perpetual rights for this, but not For Whom the Bell Tolls or Ain't No Grave, but The Memory Remains by Metallica.
Another great song playing into this storyline. Yeah, I love the way they use the music in this.
Why this one has the rebroadcast, I don't know.
But I'm glad it is.
It's great because you have that long history of them being in a combined ridiculous number of cell matches out of how many there had been to that point, and you have this, you know, just also the memory of the previous year remains with The Undertaker. That's what this hair cutting obsession and what this match is structured on, is the memory of that match, it remains with him and he's not happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and they call this the end of an era, and
Right.
it's the end of the Attitude Era.
It's the end of the Attitude Era. It's the end of this 4-match series. Yeah. I think, a lot of people questioning why they call it the end of the era. They're all back at WrestleMania the next year doing stuff. Right. But, looking back at it with some perspective, you couldn't see what they were going for.
Right. It's the end of... It's obviously the Attitude Era ended in 2001. But this is the end of the era of Attitude Era guys having great matches with each other.
Yeah.
This is the last great match between two Attitude Era guys there will ever be.
Yeah.
There isn't one after. You're not seeing Undertaker versus Goldust after this match. You're not seeing, you get Undertaker versus CM Punk or Undertaker versus Lesnar, but those are Attitude versus Ruthless Aggression.
And unfortunately, we saw Undertaker and Kane versus Shawn Michaels and Triple H again.
And it wasn't.
It was. We all wish we hadn't seen it.
Yeah, it wasn't a great match.
No.
What this match tells us is that yes, the Undertaker remains undefeated, but he is beatable, and the past will never be an option to end the streak. No one from the Attitude Era is the answer.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and it has
because you can't even combine Shawn and Triple H and have the answer.
Exactly, you have maybe the greatest near fall in WrestleMania history. Yeah, or any history with that super kick pedigree combo. I mean, who watching that did not think that was it at that point? Yeah. I mean, unbelievable.
And again, like 26, Undertaker immediately rushing Triple H into the corner, strikes. It's straight to same pace setting kind of deal. We're calling back there. They exit the ring. We get some, again, exploration of space like the previous outside the ring, like the previous year. We have the in-cell camera, and that sounds terrible when you say it. The camera in the cell.
There you go. Yeah.
The camera in the cell is right there, and the bulk of this match is shot with the cameras that are in the cell as opposed to shots from outside the cell, which is not the case with most cell matches. A lot of you get a lot of shots from outside the cell too. This one is almost entirely those cameras inside, I think. And so you get this right up in their amplification of physicality. So even though they're not doing anything at this stage that's more brutal or violent than the previous year, it feels like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have Shawn, of course, being the pivotal character because he's torn between his best friend, between the man he respects, and Taker just dominates for the early going of this match.
Right.
It's exactly like what you can tell what the strategy of Undertaker's approach to 26 was in kayfabe, which was I'm gonna just dominate the crap out of Shawn and beat him and end this silly challenge and his career, but the leg gave way. Here he just straight up puts that into motion on Triple H, and there's no stopping him until Triple H gets off a wrestling counter. A DDT.
Yeah.
And then he hits Taker with a spine buster on the steps, and that's when Undertaker's momentum is taken away, and Triple H begins to do what Triple H does, which is, all right, I'm going to get the chair, and we're going to, not one chair, two chairs. Shawn then starts getting involved, finally. Shawn's been kind of, in the wings reacting to things. But Triple H, of course, lays into The Undertaker a lot, and Shawn's like, just cover him already.
Yeah.
And Triple H, pulls him off, and he's like, end it or I will. We get so much more talking in this match. the previous matches have laid the groundwork for it. There's no talking between, other than spot, info passing, but no audible talking in the 25 match. None in 26, but Shawn signals clearly at the end with the throat slash, and Undertaker telling Shawn, stay down.
Yeah.
Just the once. Lots more in 27. Triple H, reversing that, stay down, what's wrong with you, just die. Here, there's talking throughout the match.
Yeah, it's going to that cinematic level, escalating throughout all these years, where you talked earlier about how it's not so much the moves, really, as we go on. It is these characters, their motivations, their acting, their performances that really tells the story more than any one move does.
Yeah. So, and Taker, of course, refuses. He's telling Shawn, don't stop it. Never stop it. Shawn has this moral dilemma. And that's kind of the crux of this match, is we have a man with a moral dilemma. Sure, they can beat each other to the point of winning a match, but he doesn't want one of them to murder the other.
Yes.
That's kind of against the rules. And, we get the stairs. We have a bigger variety of weapons in this match than the previous year. Last year was the only weapon actually used in 27 was the chair.
Yeah.
Sledgehammer got brought in but didn't get used.
And it shows the desperation for Shawn and Hunter.
Chairs. The sledgehammer gets used.
Yeah.
Straight to Undertaker's face. And you have that moral drama. Taker puts Shawn in Hell's Gate because Shawn is about to call the match off. Triple H pegs him in the head with the hammer. We get Undertaker Hell's Gate to Triple H then. We get a repeat of the ending to 27, and Undertaker releases the hold, and Charles Robinson gets in. Undertaker goes for the pin. Triple H kicks out, so he chokeslams Robinson. Frustration.
Yes.
Because, again, the Undertaker is a
humanity.
Man.
Yeah. Yep.
Sweet chin music into the pedigree. Taker, talks about this in the last ride. He says this is the moment they set up. And it's set up over the course of the 3 previous matches going to this. Shawn hits Taker. Triple H hits Taker. They wanted this moment to be the most believable. They're ending the streak moment in the match or in the series, and it really is. It looks like it should be the finish, and you can see in the fans, there live, that they think it's over. They think the Undertaker's basically just getting cheated out of his streak, and he doesn't. He doesn't quit. And it's the climax of this match.
Yeah.
Everything else is just resolution.
You've built it up for 4 years to get to that point. Yeah.
And, he has it in him to fight. As long as he's game to fight, he's nearly superhuman. He's still human, but he's peak. Triple H takes that hammer again, and he's gonna swing it like a baseball bat, and Shawn's just like, no, I'm not letting this happen. He, throws it. Triple H shoves him aside, and it's this moment of Triple H's obsession now with beating the Undertaker is taking him to a dark place, worse than Taker's obsession with getting this match, worse than Shawn's obsession with beating the streak. And it makes up Shawn's mind, in a way.
Right.
Because Taker, hits a tombstone, 2 count. Shawn's, an emotional wreck, as JR calls. They keep fighting. We get the yay boo punches, and we know who the crowd wants to win this, obviously. And
at this point,
Undertaker now is the one telling Triple H to stay down, and it's and then Triple H, he does the, in the corner, he's got the hammer. Taker takes it, and we get, further evolution, because we had Shawn holding himself up on Taker's leg, slash the throat. We had Triple H basically in Undertaker's position with Undertaker at his feet. Then we have Triple H in the corner, and he's just like, all right, finish it, suck it, hit me with the hammer, just end it. And Taker hits him with the hammer, and Shawn is not looking. He's like, what have I allowed to happen? Taker hurls it into the cell, like, just violently.
Right.
I every time I watch it, I worry that it'll bounce off the cell and back into the ring and hit someone. And he tombstone finish, and again, just like with 26, and they pull Triple H to his feet, they hug on the ramp. It's a beautiful moment. And what I would say about these matches as a whole is, if you don't have this series of matches humanizing The Undertaker more and more through the course of them, and the humanization continues. 29, he wrestles Punk, and of course it's after Paul Bearer dies.
Right.
You can't have Undertaker lose that match.
No.
But these matches are the reason ending the streak becomes believable.
Yeah.
I still don't think Brock Lesnar is necessarily the right choice, but it's inherently believable, regardless of who it would have been. Whenever they did call the end of the streak, if it had been Brock, if they had waited a year and decided Bray, or whatever, these matches are what make the end of the streak possible.
Yeah.
Because they've brought The Undertaker down from that level of almighty god of WrestleMania wrestling, literal death, to, well, he's not literal death. He's a man.
Yeah.
Who takes on the role of death at WrestleMania.
And they elevate, even looking outside of it that way, these are the best matches he's had during the history of the streak as well. They elevate that streak to the importance that it still has in the world of wrestling to this day. Because, he had the match with Edge, match with Batista, both really good matches.
Those were great.
Yeah, match with Ric Flair's good. But these were just
level.
Yeah.
Level up. And the Hell in a Cell match with Triple H here, with Shawn as the referee, it's, if you break it down in terms of, if you're thinking about wrestling as an athletic performance that's designed to simulate a combat, it's an absolutely terrible wrestling match.
Okay, yeah.
But if you think about what wrestling is, it uses the idea of a combat sport as the foundation for a theatrical performance. And most of the time that will be the theatrical performance of combat. Because don't break what's not, don't fix what's not broke. I like wrestling, and I don't care for boxing or MMA because they're real.
Yes.
I don't need the real. I want a story.
Yes.
And so the way that these matches, they take us through a journey of, we have one of those it's about as pure a professional wrestling. Yes, it's a little, no one would do a moonsault in an actual match, but in an actual fight that wouldn't be done. But it's wrestling.
Yeah,
we'll go with it.
We wouldn't have a guy dressed up as an Undertaker in a real fight either.
Yeah.
So
we have, we run the spectrum from that to just this side of Final Deletion, Boneyard, Firefly, Funhouse level theatricality. We're just this, because we're still inside a ring in an arena with people in a live audience, no second takes, nothing like that. But we're about on the edge of what's possible theatricality-wise with a pro wrestling match in this final match. And we have this gradual evolution toward that. And we have this gradual de-emphasis of the in-ring grappling wrestling element and this corresponding overemphasis on the brutality, violence, because that's the kind of story wrestling is really built to tell, is someone is willing to go so far to hurt their opponent. It's what wrestling's built for.
Yeah. And is that how you kind of sum things up when you teach about this, as sort of the underlying theme, or how do you lock it into this thesis? Or
so this ultimate thesis about the humanization and the idea of the streak being broken is something that actually I did not have it fully click yet until about 2 weeks ago. So when I've taught this, I've also taught other matches in and around. So like I pair this in contrast to, say, Asuka versus Bayley and Asuka versus Ember, those 4 matches in NXT, because I think they showcase a really interesting kind of reverse parallel track. Because you have another, and it plays nicely because you have this other streak element. Yeah. The idea of a streak itself is an interesting storytelling device, and I think for my students, what I always tried to get to, given the limits of, I have a class that meets 3 days a week, and we get 50 minutes a day on each of those days, is okay. So I'm just gonna kind of hit you with a bunch of wrestling and show you some of the possibilities of how you can see a narrative emerge from the physical action, and also how these can be connected across matches, how the idea of a wrestling feud tells a story across the matches and between the matches. And so it's for the Gen Ed course, it's really just kind of a broad-based, okay, I really want to sell you on the idea that this is telling stories, and just try and get you in the door of, okay, it is telling stories, I believe you now, and I can kind of start putting the pieces together myself of what kind of story, because I don't like to do the, okay, so we're reading Beowulf, this is what Beowulf's about. I don't do that, because that's not my role as a teacher. My role is to give them the tools to figure that out on their own.
And have you gotten like some interesting feedback from any of the students on stuff like this that you weren't expecting?
I have. I've had some really interesting responses and reactions to teaching wrestling in the classroom. I've had students who say, like, because I did 4 days of it in class, in a semester, and I've had students say there was way too much emphasis on wrestling, because I would, we have this time right before class, and I'll just show a quick 2-minute quick match before class starts. It's not even part of class, it's just me being like, well, we have time to kill before class starts, and I don't feel like playing some music or anything. Or I've had students tell me that they became very interested. One class I showed the Mankind Undertaker Hell in a Cell match the first day of class when we finished going through the syllabus, because we had like 15 minutes to kill, and I was like, no questions at all, really? Usually there's questions. Okay. Let me just kind of disabuse you of a couple notions, because I know that there's the wrestling bit at the end of the semester. So I'm going to kind of prompt you right now. Wrestling is not fake. It is scripted.
Exactly. Yes.
Here, watch this. And one student came to me the next class, and she was like just absolutely taken by it. She went out looking on her own for other matches, and watched Charlotte and Sasha Hell in a Cell.
Okay.
And thought she loved it. and I think the fact that it had that kind of callback-ish moment to the Mankind Taker Cell match really worked well for her as a person with no other exposure.
Yeah.
And she was just like really, really fascinated by it. I've had students in some classes where I didn't teach any wrestling material. Like this past semester, I didn't teach any wrestling material. My gen ed classes, I focused on theming all my stuff around love, and it's kind of hard to do wrestling material around that. Like, if I could, I would probably pick like the Macho Man Elizabeth
That's
wedding.
That's the one I was gonna say. Yeah, Macho Man Warrior, that sort of stuff.
But it doesn't really, quite work. And I had students like, I wish you did some wrestling stuff. I had my monsters class last semester. One of my students was a wrestling fan going in, and he wrote his paper on the Golden Lovers.
That's awesome.
And I was just like, yeah, I'm digging this. Like,
yeah.
I don't follow New Japan really.
Yeah.
But I was really into the analysis of the Golden Lovers story.
I hope you gave him an A+ on that one.
I gave him a good grade on it because it was really well done. Like, it's and the thing I try to key my students into is I'm not interested in you agreeing with me.
Yeah.
For the sake of agreeing with me, I'm trying to help you develop skills of interpretation and skills of persuasive argument and skills of writing to be able to make a case for what you believe in. And so if you disagree with me on something, great. I want to see what your argument is, and I will grade you on what your argument is. If you agree with me, honestly, I'm probably a little harder on you just because I expect you to represent your argument well.
Sure.
I don't, if you agree with me, but your argument is full of holes and really just makes the entire side of the argument look bad, I'm not going to be happy to have my opinion represented in that way. So, don't just pick wrestling. Like, I would tell students, I'm like, don't pick wrestling material for your paper just because you think, oh, it'll appeal to me and that I'll give you a good grade automatically for doing it.
Yeah,
like, exactly. I'm definitely gonna appreciate your initiative because it's harder to do because there's not as much material to work with in terms of secondary research as models of how to write academically about wrestling.
Well,
that just means you're setting yourself up for a little more difficult a time, but I'm interested. Yeah. I had a student write about women's wrestling and borrowed my copy of Sisterhood of the Squared Circle for Source, and it was an interesting one because the students, like, I'm really kind of interested in you've talked a little about how women's wrestling has had some periods where it wasn't very respected. Can you tell me a bit more about why? And I'm like, yeah, I can tell you why. They were pretty much commodified sex objects. And so the student, emails me like, I think I want to write about that transition. And do you have any, like, things I should look into? And I was like, okay, I want to preface this email in response with, I fully support your idea for the paper. I'm going to send you here's a curated list of matches kind of showing an evolution of how WWE has presented women's wrestling. Some of these matches are even matches based around the concept of stripping your opponent into her underwear. Yeah. This is not sexual harassment. This is legitimate academic thing.
Yeah, that could be its whole class right there.
Whoever in IT may be watching this email. I am not sending my students material about women's wrestling and that type of match just for funsies. I'm doing it to fuel, legitimate curiosity and contextualization of where an industry has been in terms of sexism. And it turned out to be a pretty good paper. Probably if I recall right, maybe a solid B plus level paper. It was well written. It wasn't quite... It became more of a history paper than a literature kind of analysis paper.
Yeah.
Which is where it kind of skewed aside and missed, kind of that ability to... But for what it was really good.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate what you're doing out there, and I love the idea of looking at the academic side of professional wrestling and, giving it a little bit more credibility, a little bit more respect as an art form, because I know Travis and I and so many fans out there, we do see it as more than just entertainment. When it's at its best, like these Undertaker, Triple H, Shawn Michaels series, it is like great literature. It is a great art form. So I know I would have been excited to have had you as a teacher when I was in college. I would have killed to have somebody teach about wrestling. That's so cool. Before we wrap things up, before we totally close it out, just what are some quick thoughts on, you mentioned the Last Ride series, so I know you've been watching that, and the Boneyard match. I mean, you talk about cinematic. I mean, what are just some quick impressions of those two things to a lifelong Undertaker fan?
Oh, man. The Boneyard match was my favorite match of the entire WrestleMania weekend. I think... it might be my favorite WrestleMania match of all time.
Wow.
Just for being as interesting and unique, and like it's all punches.
Oh, there's no wrestling, quote unquote,
and a choke slam.
Yeah,
it's punches and a choke slam off a roof, and I think Anderson gets tombstoned on the roof.
Yeah,
that's it. Like, there's no moves.
No.
This is as far from wrestling as, like, almost as far from wrestling as it gets, because Firefly Funhouse was even further.
True.
But it was character work that was super compelling, and AJ Styles is not someone who is traditionally lauded for his character work, but he's been stepping that up his entire time in WWE, and he just brought it fantastically here. It's a perfect mini movie encapsulation of what the Undertaker character is,
and so much of it is built off of these matches. Like, to see him humanized in these 4 matches,
right?
I don't know if we would get to something like the Boneyard match without these 4 matches.
Yeah. I mean, it incorporates Big Evil in there again. You get Biker Taker in, and it's fun. Like, it was just a fun match, and like I mean, I won't put it up as my pick for, best match in WrestleMania history because it's not a match. It's my favorite match in
Okay.
WrestleMania history
Okay. Yeah.
for its pure entertainment value.
Yeah.
I would
gotcha.
probably put Shawn Taker 26 or Shawn Razor at 10 as probably best match at WrestleMania. But this holds a spot.
Yeah.
There for me. And as far as the last ride, it's been again just fascinating to see, because they're not even just peeling layers back; they've chopped the onion.
Oh yeah.
Seeing the Undertaker just be Mark Calloway reflecting on his career, and he reflects on his career better than most wrestlers do in out of kayfabe podcasts and stuff. Like, you gotta listen to like Steve Austin or Bret Hart to get this level of insight into the process and ideas of these matches, because most of them aren't doing it. The 24 series is still almost kayfabe-ish.
Yeah.
Like they get right up to the line of acknowledging that everything is predetermined, and they don't cross it.
Yeah.
So those are good documentaries, but they're, just this side of kayfabe, and the Undertaker's just demolishing it here, which is surprising to me.
And we haven't heard him tell these sort of stories before. Like,
yeah.
Steve Austin,
so it's new.
It's a great storyteller.
New info, too.
Yeah, we've heard all of Steve Austin's stories before. And I'll listen to them a million times because they're entertaining, but I've heard them all.
He'll tell us again and again and again.
Yeah, and it's fine. It's great. But
I mean,
there's
so many times he can talk about Royal Rumble '97 that I remember. That baby oil.
Yes.
Zip zop, I'm out. Sean, I don't know what's up. You figure it out.
I know. I could hear him tell it a million times, and I'll listen. But I've heard it. As far as Undertaker, though, it's stuff we thought in our head. But to hear him actually confirm it or tell us something different, it's really interesting.
And that's the other thing is, he can, a lot of what I said, is stuff that I've been thinking about these matches before he said anything about it. And it's him saying that this kind of he didn't say anything about the humanization with this, but like, the Sweet Chin Music pedigree, saying this is the moment we wanted to kind of key up as they're breaking the streak moment. And it's like, okay, yeah, anyone sufficiently knowledgeable enough about the previous matches, about the context of wrestling and how a match works, could put in the analysis to reach that conclusion, as we all did. If he had said something different, though, like, we could still take that opinion, because the thing about art is it's subject to interpretation. There's not one right answer. There's a lot of right answers.
Yes.
Some answers may be more right or differently right than others. Like, I don't know if Mark Calloway would say that this series of matches is about humanizing the Undertaker. But if you look at them in context with each other and you watch kind of how these matches play out, it's really hard not to take that away as a part of what they're doing.
Yeah. That's the beauty of it. Well, Spenser, St. Ridley, I appreciate you joining me and discussing all this, breaking all this down. I think it's fascinating. How can people follow you and get in touch with you and what you're doing?
I'm on Twitter at St. Ridley. I have that's kind of the main thing people should use. I mean, otherwise, if you want to write me to ask for any kind of teaching resources I might have. I have a very large folder of academic articles about pro wrestling You could email me at Spenser, Spenser hyphen Santos, Santos at uiowa.edu. If we ever get it off the ground again, Heel Town Podcast will be back eventually, I hope.
Yeah, you got the time right now. Make it happen. You got some great insight. We would love to hear it back up and going.
I hope. Yeah, if you ever go to a Shimmer show in the Chicago area, look me up. I'll probably be there. Yeah, I'm currently just trying to figure out a new employment situation more than anything.
I'm in the same boat right now myself, so
well, I wish you luck.
Yeah, same to you. I appreciate you joining me today. It's been really fun.
Wait. Travis isn't here. Do I get to say it?
Oh, I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. Yeah, absolutely. But thank you again for joining us and for making the time. You know, we spent 2 hours talking about 4 matches. It's been great fun, and you made the time in the schedule for me, so I appreciate it, and I appreciate your support. And yeah, you can close us out.
All right, well, after 4 matches, 2 hours listening to us yammer, take her easy.
I love it. I love it.